To make your own worm compost system, you will need at least one plastic bin with a lid. I'm building a 3-bin system because it makes harvesting castings easier, especially since I'm doing this in a non-traditional space and I want to be as neat as possible. Check around online if you're planning to build with less containers because there are lots of great resources and advice. You'll also need a spigot, something to raise the bucket off the ground like the dolly I've got here, a drill with a 3/16 bit and something larger for the spigot hole, wood or something else to hold the bins up a bit from each other, mesh or screen, newspaper, and soil. The first step is to drill into the side of one bin near the bottom and install your spigot. This will help drain any residual or other water from the worm bin and keep your worms from drowning. It's worth noting that the liquid you drain from the bin can also be used as a fertilizer, but shouldn't be used on edible plants as it may contain runoff substances that are harmful if ingested. For added stability, I'm installing my dolly on my bin. You can also rest your bin off the ground on some bricks, cinder blocks, etc., but I want to be able to move my bin around easily when I do live feeding sessions with patrons. Either way, you don't want it to be moving around too much or your worms will try to escape. Lay your mesh or screen in the bottom of the bin, overlapping your spigot. This will prevent any castings, food, or worms that might drop through the holes from clogging it. Now take your other 2 bins and drill a bunch of holes in the bottom an inch or 2 apart. These will serve double duty as air holes and passages for the worms to move into the next bin when it's time to harvest. You'll also drill into one lid. Next, attach whatever you're using to stop the bins from fully sinking into one another. I'm using some scrap wood and just gluing it in place. Stack one of the bins with the holes on top of the bottom bin. You can set the 3rd bin aside for now, as you won't need it until you're ready to harvest castings. The first thing to go in your bin is shredded paper bedding. You can use scrap paper, black and white newsprint, or craft paper. Make sure not to use color newsprint, as the ink can be toxic. When your bin is about a quarter full of shredded paper, you want to wet it down. The paper should be wet but not dripping, like a wrung-out dishcloth. This is faster and easier with a hose, but non-traditional spaces mean working on a smaller scale. If you've got it, it's a good idea to add a layer of grit. Things like coffee grounds, tea, and eggshells, just to get the worms started. Then, on top of that, a layer of soil. It's a good idea to let your bin sit for a few days before adding your worms. We're using red wigglers that I got from wormbox.ca, and I'm adding them to the bin along with some of the shredded cardboard from their box for additional bedding. Then another light layer of soil and a misting to keep everything moist. Here are some things to remember about keeping worms. They'll eat their weight in food each day, but it's better to start off with smaller feedings until you get a good rhythm. Try to limit the number of feedings so that you don't disturb them too often. Don't keep them anywhere that they might get too hot or too cold. And remember to check out our program calendar for our live feeding sessions.